Scientists have divided the planet into various eras, epochs, and periods. Many people know the time of the dinosaurs as the Mesozoic era with the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. The era of mammals is known as the Cenozoic era, which also has its own sets of periods, and those periods have their own sets of epochs. Epochs align with different types of changes to the environment, such as ice ages. For the last 12,000 years, the human race has lived in the Holocene epoch. The Holocene came to be during the earliest signs of civilization as well as agriculture. Very dramatic changes that humans have put on the environment have possibly brought us into a new epoch of the Cenozoic era. This new epoch is called Anthropocene. Anthro means human. Anthropocene as a whole means the era of human activity. Humans are basically part of everything that geologists believe is causing this change and all that goes along with any kind of industrialization that we have used to further the progression of the human race, such as mining, construction, and modern warfare. Then they are also suggesting that agriculture is one of the signs that the earth is changing because we destroy ecosystems to create fields which need pesticides. The pesticide use is affecting water, air, soil, and animals. Farming is also influencing CO2 emissions. This is all because much of the deforestation of the world is to make room for field use for agriculture that need to feed an ever-growing population. So it is more about how agriculture is another reason that is forcing the earth to change. Humans are creating all the signs that make geologists believe the Earth is entering a new geological time period. The main things scientists see are how industrialization and farming have actually changed. When these three things have changed considerably in the past epoch, it has signified a new time period. The third thing that it would have in common with other periods would be seeing mass extinctions of the plant and animal species. The three main topics would be the way industrialization and agriculture produced by humans are changing the surface of the earth, how that change affects the atmosphere and water systems, and how all this is causing animals and plant species to collapse. What this also means is that there is not just blame put on us, but responsibility. The result of studies and some speculate that human impact on Earth is likely to have significant and long-lasting consequences that may be causing the Earth to enter into a new geological epoch, Anthropocene. Whether the Anthropocene epoch is adopted by geologists and is granted its moment in Earth's lifeline, it is apparent that humans will leave their unmistakable stamp within the globe's surface.
The main reason that we may be seeing enough change that geologists are considering a new epoch may be continuing industrialization in industrialized countries such as the US. The beginning of the Anthropocene may be linked to the dawn of the Industrial Revolution starting around 200 years ago. This was about the time that carbon emissions were first starting to impact the atmosphere and acid levels in the ocean were starting to rise. Construction, pollution, and extraction of fossil fuel and natural resources have already left an irreversible impression on the Earth's surface, in its oceans and atmosphere. In the megacities of the world, a solid extra layer of pavement, concrete, buildings, and houses have added to the Earth's shell, changing the surface completely through human hands. The creation of these things also moves a lot of dirt and sometimes makes unstable surfaces, causing unnatural erosion and sediment deposits in the form of mudslides, etc. This kind of change in surface coverage can be likened to the glaciers of the Ice Age. It is a sign that scientists have looked for in other time periods to determine the start of new geological times. The lay of the world's land is becoming less and spoiled by the second, and whether used in construction, mining, or war, modern explosives and equipment have changed the Earth's surface forever. Scientists have even found traces where Earth has incorporated artificial radionuclides into its rocks and ice. Remnants from such things as the dropping of the atomic bomb and the breakdown of nuclear plants, such as the one that is currently happening in Japan. Mining and construction have hollowed out the Earth's crust in our search for fossil fuels and precious metals, demolishing mountain ranges, prairies, tundras, and deserts. What we do with these natural resources is causing the most noticeable harm. Burning them to run the world's transportation methods and bring its buildings to life has caused atmospheric changes that are happening at a rate that scientists are finding hard to keep up with and actually predict the impact they will have. What they do know is the impact will be huge. Seeing the results in our air, oceans, land, and those living there, especially if we continue to increase our dependence on fossil fuels, and industrialization reaches even the most rural areas, which per capita actually use more energy and create more pollution than the cities of the world. The one factor that scientists agree is currently happening and is a definite sign that the Anthropocene is approaching is the change in the world's species migration patterns and mass extinctions of plants and animals. All major epochs have either seen a new development in species production or extinction on mass levels. Anthropocene is experiencing the latter. Plants and insects are getting hit the hardest at this point, as we see pollinators on the decrease because of pesticides and loss of habitat. And this is therefore decreasing the reproduction of plants. The depletion of nutrients from overused soil and polluted water are doing their part to wipe out certain plant species, as well as many water-dwelling amphibians, reptiles, and fish that also help to control destructive insect populations. These harmful insects are actually becoming pesticide resistant and increasing in number, and can deplete the food supplies of whole ecosystems, forcing other animals and plants to migrate or die. The signs that change is happening are not just occurring on land, but are also starting to claim their victims in the polar regions and oceans. Polar bear biologists are starting to call themselves polar bear historians, because they don't believe it will even survive the next 2 decades. The melting of the ice caps is making it difficult to find food, and even if they survive the swim and reach land, they are often too exhausted to hunt, so they starve to death. The plankton that is the source of all ocean life in these chilly waters is also finding it hard to survive as the water temperatures rise, causing whales, schools of fish, and ultimately the animals that survive off these fish to suffer. And there have already been signs that some whales have changed their migration patterns in search of food. These factors and others, such as poaching, large-scale fishing, drought, and loss of habitat, are all combining to become the 6th largest extinction of plant and animal species in the Earth's history. Declining species populations, changes in carbon emissions, acidification of the ocean, erosion, and sediment deposits have all been components geologists used to define previous geological time periods. The difference for the Anthropocene is that the inhabitants of Earth and the change they make to it are actually the reasons it is happening. Which is different from other ones where, rises in levels of emissions and acidification were actually due to such things as asteroids striking Earth.
Our planet has changed so quickly and so determinately because of the effects of climate change. Farming and population explosion that some believe we are in the middle of another epoch, which they call Age of Man. Industrial Revolution around 1800 to 1850 marked a major event in the role of humans in modifying Earth's climate through rising concentration of greenhouse gases. Anthropocene epoch actually began approximately 8,000 years ago, and this was when agriculture began in many places of the world. Back then, the population of the world was only about 5 million people, but not all of them were farmers. The hunters and gatherers were also using fire both for hunting and clearing land to allow green grass to grow. Early agriculture revolution was based upon the upward trends of greenhouse gases more than 5,000 years ago. Land use changes directly related back to those times too. Greenhouse gases contributed significantly to modern global climate change. This graph suggests that over the last 2 decades, the Earth is experiencing its hottest years yet. Ecosystem processes and anthropogenic biomes are a function of human population and their ecosystem land use, such as forests, rangelands, croplands that include people. Humans have transformed the world through farming, and 38% of the planet's ice-free land is now agriculture. The 38% of Earth's ice-free land is to feed 7 billion people today and expected to be 2 billion by 2050. And this graph shows the changes in croplands, rangelands, and wildlands from the 1700s to present day, and it shows the changes that have taken place over time in each of these categories. Effects that seem most significant today will leave behind only subtle traces later on. Farming and ranching have impacted more than the soil they use, but also our water supply, animal and plant species, and forests. Yields of some crops, including U.S. and African corn, and the greenhouse gas lingers in the atmosphere for hundreds or even thousands of years. Pollen records and huge expanses of agricultural corn and wheat where rainforests, mountainous areas, and seas would have been expected and were before. Agricultural practices lead to the release of large amounts of carbon dioxide. Those practices included burning and vegetation before planting the crops. Geological records show high carbon dioxide levels from 8,000 years ago. Carbon dioxide concentration started to grow when early farmers cleared vast stretches of forest to plant crops, thus reducing the plant's ability to stop up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. When people learned to irrigate rice 5,000 years ago, paddies created for that purpose led to a jump in methane emissions, which prevented the planet from slipping into an ice age. The change in methane is huge. It's difficult to think it's not natural. There were so few people alive 5,000 years ago that it would be hard for humans to count for methane changes. The invention of rice agriculture in China and deforestation also increased methane and carbon dioxide. Here is an atmospheric concentration on the left axis and radioactive forcing on the right axis of methane, which is potent greenhouse gas about a third as bad as carbon dioxide. And on the x-axis it's identical to the human growth curve starting at 1,000 and ending at 2,000. The results of studies and some speculate that human impact on the Earth is likely to have a significant and long-lasting consequences that may be causing Earth to enter into a new geological epoch, Anthropocene. For these three reasons: humans are contributing to the depletion on Earth's natural systems. Definite signs of Anthropocene are becoming clear: mass extinctions of plants and animals,